much. Very good afternoon to all of you. And thank you, Zoom, for the invite. And we are supposed to discuss the economic interdependence between India and China. And I carefully listened to the previous speakers. There is more of geopolitics than economic interdependence in this. So I think let me focus on this aspect and also, of course, bring in geopolitics, because as Ambassador Bombawala mentioned, there are certain basic lines in bilateral relations that need to be respected. Otherwise, we still will be groping in the dark. So let me say that liberal institutionalists coined this word economic interdependence, like Robert Keohane and Joseph Nye and others. So one of the fundamental aspects of economic interdependence, our topic today, include A and B trading with each other, investing in each other, and interacting with each other in people-to-people contacts, tourism, and so on. And this leads to a kind of understanding between the two. Somebody mentioned trust, building trust. In other words, A and B enhancing trust. And that influences the political leadership to avoid skirmishes, avoid security-related problems. So Keohane and Nye articulated this, and to a large extent during globalization, which is what the Center for China and Globalization is doing. During this globalization process, that would lead to a kind of understanding, and we avoid war, we avoid conflict, we avoid disturbances in the system. So liberal institutionalists' influence has spread, especially in the last, say, 2-3 decades, and this has been one of the key momentum in the history in recent times. So that is one. So FDI, foreign direct investment, trade, WTO entry, China entered in 2001, which basically mentions about tariff reductions, most favored nation treatment given to countries. A gives MFN to B and B gives to A, similar processes, and that's where the economic interdependence and people-to-people contact, meaning tourism, would be substantially increased. 2 years ago, prior to COVID-19, China had about 180 million tourists going abroad. And of course, because of border controls and quarantine procedures, and the other, what China mentions as dynamic zero COVID policies, tourism has come down in China and other parts of the world. So this is supposed to influence the political leadership at all levels. And so that is, we can bring in the Wuhan informal summit meeting, the Chennai Connect between Prime Minister Modi and President Xi. So that is supposed to lead to a lot of interdependence. So that is, so let us look at India, China, what is the status of interdependence between the two. Let me argue that India-China interdependence has been very, very constricted for various reasons, which I would just outline. But first, the models of economic development. In India, we have now ease of doing business has increased by 3 times. We jumped up the scale, and FDI in India has increased substantially. In fact, last 2-3 years, FDI into India, foreign direct investment, has increased to nearly 3rd position in the global ranking on FDI flows. Secondly, exports have increased last 2 years, and we intend to increase that to about $700-800 billion, as against $6 trillion by China's exports and imports. in the GDP of China. The third is, of course, we have launched several campaigns like Digital India, Skill India, Atmanirbharta campaign, that is self-sufficiency, and a host of other things like Sagarmala, Made in India, Make in India policy. China had the Made in China 2025. China also has many of these programs already put in place. So, but specific reforms included supply side economic reforms in China, and of course the domestic consumption under the 13th Five-Year Plan and 14th Five-Year Plan. So between India and China, India extended the MFN status to China in 1984, most favored nation treatment, and double taxation agreement was signed in 94, and we had the also agreement on the Bangkok agreement has also been accepted. Tariff has been reduced, 188 products from China and 217 more than what China could offer to India. 217 products from India. These were the tariff reduction. During the visits by Rajiv Gandhi, Li Keqiang, Xi Jinping, Modi, in all these, we enhanced the economic interdependence, at least in statements. Why I'm mentioning this is, when we look at, we only have a restricted economic interdependence between China and India. For example, we have the special economic dialogues conducted between the NDRC in China and the Niti Aayog now, Planning Commission before, and we had a financial dialogue, a steel dialogue, iron and steel dialogue, and renminbi rupee exchange, or an understanding between the two. And in the BRICS and others, we try to do the local currency exchange, which has now become more intensified. So with all this, the trade increased substantially. As other speakers have mentioned, we have $120 billion. Dr. Wang mentioned about these figures. In fact, a 2005 deadline for $100 billion by 2010 has only been reached in 2021, despite COVID and other supply chain disruptions. So trade increased, that is good. But what India realized is trade is skewed in China's favor, and China had shown restriction on the Indian products entry, like IT software, pharmaceuticals, or other products. So India is one of the manufacturing centers. For example, the United Nations bodies mentioned India is the 6th largest manufacturing country, and today is diversifying its exports. But we see a great wall in China in terms of these exports to China, especially in IT software and pharmaceutical products. So whatever be the Chinese story, reason about this, there is an asymmetric interdependence. And increasingly, there are calls within India that we lost $1.2 trillion in trade deficits. If Trump can impose tariffs on China in January 2018, and the tariff wars really disturbed the whole trading system globally, India has not yet initiated any tariff wars, but there is a serious thinking in India that the asymmetric interdependence is in favor of China, not in favor of India. So the next steps would be obviously the decoupling process, and that intensified with the Galwan crisis in June 2020. And that is where the geopolitics comes in economic interdependence. So that is where probably we will see some steps here. The third aspect of economic interdependence is investments. Now, for a $17 trillion GDP country like China, the total Chinese investments in India are $8.2 billion. Chinese investments in Pakistan are $52 billion. But for a country which is growing at 8%, this year. The total Chinese investments is $8.2 billion, as Ambassador Sun Weidong has mentioned recently. So investments have not really gone up by China, although it boasts of the second largest economy in the world. So that is where we have also the, while India extended the MFN statement, we have seen recently the RCEP. India did not join the RCEP primarily because China did not abide by the guiding principles on comprehensive, balanced, and equitable distribution in the RCEP format, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership format, especially on equity and balance in trade, in components, tariffs, and finally on the impact on livelihood. This is an issue during the 80s China raised, but today it is silent. Also in terms of the tariff differential charges and customs duties and the federal character of the Indian system in terms of the investments. So India did not join the RCEP, and we saw Le Yucheng, the then Vice Foreign Minister, who is now being relegated to look after radio and TV programs, after his speech in Remintashwe on the limits to partnership between China and Russia. He mentioned that the RCEP countries should go without India's participation. That was a very caustic comment that he made on that. So let me summarize this by saying that we have only limited economic interdependence. And with Galwan, the fault lines have further increased in economic interdependence. Let me also touch upon why economic interdependence is a problematic with China. For instance, China banned the rare earth metals with Japan, although China, Japan have intensive economic interdependence in many fields. However, suddenly China banned the rare earth metals in early 2000s. Of course, it created opportunities for India to export rare earth metals to Japan, and Japan-India relations improvised now. We also saw when South Korea deployed the Terminal High Altitude Air Defense System, THAAD system, China put restrictions on the Chinese tourists going to Jeju Islands or to other places. So in other words, China weaponized tourism vis-a-vis South Korea. And we have also seen when Tsai Ing-wen won the elections in Taiwan, the Chinese tourist visits to Taiwan have been curtailed substantially, unlike during Ma Ying-jeou's term in Taiwan. We also see this recently. India had put restrictions on Xiaomi, Vivo, Oppo, because they have money laundered $3.7 billion to China or to other places. And so there are investigations now on these Chinese companies. Economic interdependence comes with, of course, rule of law and other aspects. And so that is where we saw. And this is not, Colonel Chow mentioned about the Yuan Wang visit to the Indian Ocean. We have genuine concerns on this because it is going to track the whole of the Indian Ocean region. And we saw the Maritime Silk Road and other also have several weaponization programs. And so we have concerns. Yuan Wang comes under the PLA Strategic Support Force. It is not a tourist boat. It is a military vessel with dual-use technologies and others. We have concerns on Indian Ocean. If you are proposing that China should come to the Indian Ocean, in diplomacy, reciprocity is important. If this is a formal proposal from Colonel Chow, then India would propose to go to the South China Sea as a reciprocal gesture, which is also part of the diplomatic practice. So India would also send the dual-use ships to the South China Sea, like Yuan Wang 5 or others, and possibly we will see the Chinese response on that aspect. So what I was trying to argue here is we have a very limited economic interdependence. And if we have to cross the bridge, as Ambassador Bombawale mentioned, we had concerns on what happened on June 15th night on 2020, and that needs to be taken care of. We have seen China behaving in the same manner when it comes to the rare earth metals, the THAAD system, now Taiwan, the military exercises and others that it had mobilized. So we also have similar concerns when it comes to the state-to-state relations. But please remember, India supported China in the WTO. India supported China on the climate change issues, in G20, in various other fora. So the coexistence and interdependence is a two-way flow. And India suggests that first, as Dr. Jaishankar mentioned, unless until peace and tranquility prevails on the border, we will not have bilateral relations expanded. So I think the signaling to China has been given both at the state-to-state level and also at the track 1.5 and track 2 levels and across the board. If China wants economic interdependence to be increased, I think China needs to follow those rules of the game as well. Thank you.
Thank you so